If you've been keeping up with this playlist, we got the verse, the chorus, and the bridge. Applying what we've learnt in those videos, we can pretty much Frankenstein together whatever type of song we can dream of, because most musical concepts are going to fit under one of those umbrellas. However, what we've looked at so far does not include any form of transition. If you master the art of joining together two musical ideas, no matter how unrelated they may be, your compositions will naturally include a level of maturity that sets you apart from your peers. It's similar to how you can listen to two guitarists play the same song, and one you know is amateur because yes, they played the song, but the professional made music. I learned years ago by countless hours of observation and practice that musical transitions are absolutely vital to making your compositions work. Sometimes a jarring, uncomfortable transition is what's needed. Other times, it's got to be something seamless and beautiful that really takes its time to develop. Most of the time, however, it's going to be something in between. It's up to you, your taste, and your skill to decide what is required for your song. As with the previous video, we're looking at these 10 songs to find our information, but please listen to your favorite songs and artists and dissect what they're doing. Once you've written down these patterns or formulas, test them out, practice over and over, and see what works in which situations. Transitional musical ideas take us from nothing to something, which is the role of the intro, from something to something, for example, a pre-chorus, where the pre-chorus's role is to take you from the verse to the chorus, or from something to nothing, which is the role of the outro. Naturally, there are other options out there, but generally, these three approaches are all you need. The rest is just applying it where you see fit. The concept of tension and release is really important for transitional phrases. This will be discussed throughout the video, so just keep your eyes out for that. Let's see what came up in our 10 songs. Number 1, a transition isn't required. Pretty often, a transition was signified simply by a cymbal hit. Literally, hey, psh, we're in a new section, here's a new melody. Nothing else changed. Number 2, most intros slowly introduce elements to the song. Whether that's the rhythm or beat, or the harmonic or melodic content, it's entirely up to the song. But from our list, none of the songs jumped into a fully developed musical idea. Number 3, 8 of our songs had pre-choruses. Number 4, every pre-chorus introduced a melody that acted as a segue between the verse and the chorus. There's more on this in the melody section. Number 5, 5 of our songs had a post-chorus, and 2 of those 5 songs, the post-chorus was a repetition of the intro. Number 6, 4 of the 10 songs finished with an a cappella section, final chorus, instruments drop out, singing continues. And number 7, 9 of our 10 songs finished on the 1 chord. What I take away from this list is generally we want to introduce the elements of our track one by one instead of all at once. It serves to build anticipation and connect us with what's to come. If we dive straight in, we risk either overwhelming our audience or not allowing our audience enough time to connect with the music that they're listening to. Another way to look at this is if we dive straight into a fully developed musical idea, it can be too much tension for the audience to connect to. We want the balance of tension and release in our song to feel natural. If you go into a situation that's too tense, you want to get out. But if the tension was slowly ramped up over time, it can be really exciting. Now, it is pretty important that you make a statement when a transition is complete. I mentioned this with the cymbal hits. Yes, some transitions were just cymbal hits, but every other transition also had a cymbal hit. If you feel like you want to go against the grain and you don't want a cymbal hit, that's fine. Do whatever you need to do. Maybe you want to go against the grain and do a chord stab, or maybe you want to do some type of drum hit, or maybe you want like an anticlimax thing where there's just a hole, there's no noise whatsoever. However, I really recommend that with these transitions, you test every single option out instead of just trying one and hoping that it is the best. I've done it multiple times, but the thing that you really don't want is to release a song and then find out a couple of years later that, hey, if you had have just included that cymbal hit, it would have had more impact. You can build tension in a million billion ways, but that big hit that you hear at the start of a chorus or whichever new section that comes in is the moment of release. You want to make that really obvious. And with all this in mind, pre-choruses are important, but you need to justify their existence. Don't let it ask too many questions because it's just a transition, but allow it to be something that helps build your climax. Harmony. Generally, our 10 songs had a pretty basic use of harmony through our transitional sections. If harmony was used in the intro, then it most likely appeared in the verse or chorus, or even both. More often than not, the harmony that was used in the verse was used in the pre-chorus. The End of Heartache, however, did have a more chordal-based approach to the verse. In the pre-chorus, it's kind of an all-out metal riff. I've discussed these kind of riffy concepts in the previous videos talking about duality and Show Me How to Live to a lesser extent, but this use of this metal riff serves to add a lot of tension in before we get the release to the pretty chorus. One thing that I think is really important to discuss here is cadences. Transitional phrases essentially exist to create movement. They are designed to get you moving into the next section, whatever that happens to be. A really good way to do this is with a cadence. An authentic cadence goes from the 5/7 to the 1 chord, and it sounds like this. If you simply hold that 5 chord for longer, then the anticipation grows like this. Maintain a pulse or increase the pulse, and the anticipation grows much more as well. You don't need to use a cadence specifically though. You can do these things in many, many different ways. But the necessary ingredient is movement. If you have a very stable chord, it does not want to move anywhere. Create some instability and you've got movement. If you hang on to this tension, you've got anticipation. Melody. From the verse and the chorus videos, there was the distinct pattern where generally the verse moved by stepwise motion, it had faster rhythms, and was less catchy than the chorus, because this is the place to share the story. The chorus, however, commonly featured leapwise motion with slower rhythms and had a real catchy vibe to it because it's the money-making section of the song. If you disagree with what I've said, go back and check the verse and chorus and bridge videos and see why I might be saying these things. And obviously these are not hard and fast rules. If the intro has a melody, it's usually going to be the chorus melody. If the outro has a melody, it's either going to be borrowing this from the chorus, the bridge, or it's going to be a variation on the chorus, potentially something ad-libbed. It's rare, but of course not unheard of, that intros and outros have their own unique melodies. With pre-choruses, there was a tendency to blur the line between verse and chorus. With our songs, the pre-choruses in general used larger intervals, were slightly slower, and were slightly more catchy than the verses. But in saying that, they used smaller intervals that were faster and less catchy than the chorus. If you're wanting to build excitement, you use larger intervals and a new rhythm. Write a semi-catchy melody that includes some unstable notes like we discussed in the harmony section, and we've got ourselves a perfect transitional piece to push us towards the climax. Rhythm. As mentioned, a big cymbal hit usually signified that we'd finished a transition. There was also usually a drum fill that led into that final cymbal hit. This fill doesn't actually have to come from drums, and I kind of treat it like a metaphor. It could be anything. Imagine if a piano starts playing the same thing over and over and starts stabbing it. Or a bass goes from soft notes to kind of sharper staccato notes. Maybe the vocal line speeds up or slows down. Any of these things ramp up anticipation for the musical change. With our tracks, the most common theme through the transition was to make the gap between the verse and the chorus smaller. So if you've got a really tiny verse and a massive chorus, then usually the pre-chorus is an intermediary step so that it's not too much of a leap. Very fast rhythms used in the verse, slower ones for the pre-chorus, and very slow ones for the chorus, and vice versa. Slow rhythms for the verse, faster rhythms for the pre-chorus, and fast rhythms for the chorus. If you're trying to build tension, you take what is familiar and you give it a new, less stable variation of itself. Do things that are a bit unpredictable or unbalanced. Do things that lead the energy where you want it to go. Sumari. A lot of what makes a transition work is context. And to take that a step further, the transitional phrases in most music serve to either increase or decrease tension. Dance music does this in a really obvious way. The synths start low and wind up over however many bars. The drums increase in volume and intensity and rhythm. Unstable chordal or melodic ideas are held out for a really long time until finally there's the huge release, which is the section of the song that you're supposed to dance to. The goal of the pre-chorus is the exact same thing. The goal of the intro is to seduce us into listening to the whole song. The goal of the post-chorus is to ease us out of the climax back into the usually lower energy verse section. And the goal of the outro is to leave us wanting more. If you're imagining whichever transition you're working on to be serving one of these purposes, then you're going to approach transitions in a much more creative and playful way. It becomes a question of energy. How do I guide the listener's mood to where I want it to go? The melody, harmony, and rhythm nearly become irrelevant because you start looking for something that is more exciting if you want to increase the energy, or less exciting if you want to decrease the energy. If you can't improvise a suitable answer, then you go and get technical. Figure out what notes or chords or rhythms might need to change to get you to your goal. It's that simple. So here's what we've got out of this video. Transitions are shifts in energy. Number 2, transitions can be very, very simple. Number 3, use transitions to seduce our audience. Number 4, tension and release is the name of the game here. Number 5, the harmonic structures are pretty similar to other sections of the song. Number 6, hanging on to chords with movement increases anticipation. Number 7, melody and rhythm should connect sections. As I said before, if the verse is low energy, the pre-chorus should be higher energy and the chorus should be the highest energy, and vice versa. And number 8, outros should want us leaving more. So now we're at a point where we should know how to approach writing a song. With all this information, it's pretty easy to now just choose what you want to be in your song and then start creating from there. Once you've made a decision on the chord progression or the general tone of the song or whatever it is you want to write about, follow the basic steps at the end of each of these videos and you will have yourself a song. With that in mind, there is still plenty of work to do. So I'm going to keep creating these videos that are going to help you out in your songwriting journey. But if you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if the question's good enough, I'm going to give it its own video. See you next time.